So my roommate and I just opened up our own soda service in our dorm room. We called it the room 607 soda service. And we just bought 2 large, refrigerators, put them in our living room, and sold soda from our dorm room. I didn't come from a business background. So I just thought it was very interesting that you could kind of make money by finding a price discrepancy. And so that was kind of one little entrepreneurial moment in my background. Even when I started a business, you're never going to hit a home run if you don't step up to the plate. To hit a home run, you've got to be willing to go into the batter's box and give it a try. And, it's kind of the old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Welcome to In Search of Excellence, where we meet entrepreneurs, CEOs, entertainers, athletes, motivational speakers, and trailblazers of excellence with incredible stories from all walks of life. My name is Randall Kaplan. I'm a serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and the host of In Search of Excellence, which I started to inspire and motivate us to achieve excellence in all areas of our lives. My guest today is Joe Mansueto. Joe is the founder and former CEO of Morningstar, a financial services and investment research firm that is one of the most recognized companies in finance, which provides investment research and investment management services to many millions of people around the world. Morningstar today has 8,556 employees and operations in 29 countries, manages over $290 billion in assets, earned $1.9 billion in revenue over the last 12 months, and has a market value of $9.2 billion, all of which has earned Joe a spot on the Forbes 400 with a reported net worth of $5 billion. Joe also owns the magazines Inc. and Fast Company, as well as 2 professional soccer teams, the Chicago Fire and the Major League Soccer League, and FC Lugano and the Swiss Super League. Joe and his wife Rika are also active and general philanthropists who have signed the Giving Pledge, which promises they will give away half of their net worth during or after their lifetime. Joe, it's a true pleasure to have you on my show. Welcome to In Search of Excellence.
Thank you so much, Randy. I'm delighted to be here.
Let's start with your family. You were born in Munster, Indiana, a small town near the Indiana-Illinois border. Your parents met at a hospital. Your dad, Mario, was an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and your mom, Sarah, was a nurse who later became a stay-at-home mom to take care of you, your brothers, and sister. You've described your childhood as classic suburban idyllic. Can you please tell us about the influence your parents had on your future and your success?
But yeah, my parents were a huge influence, I think, like most people. I was blessed to be born into a very loving, supportive family, and great moral models. As you mentioned, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse, and just very supportive of all of us kids. And whatever we wanted to do, they found a way to support our dreams and aspirations. And I think more than anything, in terms of advice they gave us, just watching them, get up, go to work every day, how they approach their lives, their values, the way they treated people. All of that, I think, rubbed off on myself and my siblings.
And do you instill the same values in your kids today? Do you actually talk to them about these values and say, these are the values I want you to have? Is that the kind of parent you are? Or do they just watch you and Rika by example and follow all the great things that you do?
It's more the latter. It's also my leadership style. Rather than preaching a lot. And I know as a child, I think when people gave me advice, I tended to maybe discount it a bit. I thought I knew a little better. And so, I always look to, others to, learn from success. But when people would tell me directly what to do, it wasn't as effective for me as watching what they did. And so I try to set a good example for my kids. And so just as my parents did for me, I think it's more by example than telling them, oh, you should work hard or you should do this or that. Because if the actions don't align with the words, it becomes apparent very quickly to someone. And so, I try and weave life lessons, into dinner conversations where I can, but without being overly preachy. But I think it's more by the example, watching us, how we live, my wife and I live our lives, treat people, the kids see that and hopefully pick up on that. And so far, I've got 3 kids in college. I think we're pretty pleased with the way they've turned out.
Let's talk about when you were a kid, you rode your bike around the neighborhood. You like to do things, building model airplanes. Can you tell us about your trips to the Walnut Room and the theater production you had in high school?
Yeah, as you may know, for somebody my age, childhood was very different than it is today. There was a lot of unstructured time. Um, if I ever said to my mom, "Hey, I'm bored," she would say, "Life is figuring out how to deal with boredom. Go figure it out." And so we'd ride our bikes around and figure it out. And so, we always liked to, do projects, whether it was, a puppet show or a theater. I did theater in high school, putting things together. But yeah, we used to love to come to downtown Chicago. At Christmas time, the Walnut Room was a big place for people to go to at Marshall Fields, the big department store downtown. And that was a pretty special moment to go downtown. We didn't always do that in Indiana, but it was a special trip to do that. And so, but yeah, just a really wonderful childhood, a lot of children in my neighborhood. So a lot of close friends, and a lot of unstructured time where, we had to figure out what to do. One of the activities I loved was, amateur radio, what is called ham radio, building transmitters, receivers, and doing that with a group of kids and trying to figure it out. And I did that in grade school and, wiring up antennas and using Morse code to talk to people around the world. I thought it was great fun. But I always liked to do projects. We had to figure out, there was no internet, there was not a lot of things to entertain us. So we had to make up our own entertainment.
You talk about the ham radio. Your first entrepreneurial experience came in the 6th grade. Tell us about the ham radio, how much money you made and what kind of impression it left on you, and what'd you do with the money you made?
Yeah, so as part of, being a ham radio, we would go to these things called ham fests, where people would sell their used ham equipment, transmitters, receivers, electronic parts. And I was pretty young. I probably was in like 4th grade. And I went to one of these ham fests with a good friend of mine who was also a ham radio operator. His parents took us, and we were going through, all of the people with all their equipment. And I noticed there was a guy selling a Drake 2B receiver, which was a top end, very high end receiver, normally sold for about $400. He was selling it for $200, or maybe a little less. And so, somehow I asked or convinced my friend's father to lend me $200 to buy this because I knew it was worth a lot more than that. And I ended up buying it. And then I put an ad in the ham radio publication and sold it for $400 within the next year. And so I made $200, which as a 4th grader, back then was, a wealth of riches. But it taught me about, that with some creativity or just, thinking and that you could figure out ways to make money, which, again, my father was a doctor, mom was a nurse. I didn't come from a business background. So I just thought it was very interesting that you could kind of make money by finding a price discrepancy. And so that was kind of one little entrepreneurial moment in my background.
As a 4th grader, how do you know even where to go on how to place an ad in a magazine? It's not like you can just go online today. Did you look in the phone book? Did you look in the magazine and just call somebody up? I think that's pretty remarkable. I don't know another 4th grader or 6th grader who's ever done that before.
Well, there was a very popular magazine, QSL, which is the greeting ham radio operators use when they talk to each other. It's the 3 letters QSL. Published by the ARRL, the American Radio Relay League. And it was the Bible that everybody read every month. And so this thing would come out every month. And I would read it from cover to cover. It would have, articles on, schematics to make transmitters, receivers. But in the back were all these ads that you could place to buy and sell equipment. And so it was in this journal, that magazine that everyone read, that I placed an ad.
You have the entrepreneurial DNA. It sounds like you had the ham radio sale. Tell us about the 607 soda service in the Shoreland dorm at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, that was another entrepreneurial experience in my background. I was a student at the University of Chicago, and the university had just purchased a new dormitory, the Shoreland Hotel, converted it into a dorm. And I was the first class to move into this dorm. And there was no place, since it was a brand new dorm, no place to buy soda or snacks. And so my roommate and I just opened up our own soda service in our dorm room. We called it the room 607 soda service because our room was room 607. And we just bought two large, refrigerators, put them in our living room, called up the Coke distributor, the Pepsi distributor, and got, lots of soda and sold soda from our dorm room. And it was a great way to meet everybody in the dorm. It was a self-service model. We'd sit at our desk and study, and there was a change dispenser. People would come in. We'd leave our the dorm room door open. People would come in, help themselves from the refrigerator, get their own, leave the money, take their own change while we studied. And we would both make about $500 a quarter from this little enterprise. I did it as a curiosity, a way to make a little money, but also just, I was just curious about business. How does this work? And so I found I really enjoyed it. It was a great way to meet people. People were happy. There was a place to buy soda. So you got that sense of fulfilling a customer's, desires, their wants. And I just thought it was fun. And so that was another entrepreneurial experience at a young age that, I think came around to, be meaningful to me.
So many successful entrepreneurs that I know. I think of Brad Keywell, who comes to mind, who's a very good friend, who I'm sure you know from Chicago, created greeting cards at 6 years old, and he sold them. I think the nitty gritty of going and calling a magazine to place an ad in the magazine, or calling a Coke distributorship as a student and convincing them to somehow sell you soda in a dorm room is really incredible. The entrepreneurs that I mentor out there, I tell them one of my sayings is go get it. And it sounds like that's yours as well. How important is it to look beyond the first curtain and go to the third, fourth, or fifth, or sixth step to really get that relationship that you want and need to be successful, going that extra mile that people don't really do?
Yeah, it's really important is to be proactive and try. There is a sense of when you do those things of being audacious, will this really work? When the Coke distributor first walked into our dorm room, he kind of sighs and says, okay, like surprised that it's not a business, a couple kids in their dorm room. And you kind of get over that moment and you think, hey, this is going to work, that he didn't just turn around and leave. And so there's that moment of, boldness. There's a saying from Goethe that I like that whatever you think you can do or dream you can do, begin it. That boldness has a magic about it. And it's true. A little boldness does have a magic about it. And every time I've taken a step, whether it was with Morningstar, taking out that first ad, there's that sense of, wow. Or, I sold Christmas trees at one point and putting up a sign on a street, as a kid. And, there's a feeling of a bit of audaciousness that you're not sure if it's going to work. And, but you find you're rewarded, for that little courageous step of trying. And so, for would-be entrepreneurs, somebody who's thinking about, starting a business, give it a try. It feels a bit audacious. You're going a bit beyond your comfort zone, but that's how you grow, by pushing yourself a little bit and going a little beyond what you would normally do. And as I say, it feels a little audacious to do these things. I'm not normally a loud, demonstrative person. So maybe for my personality, it feels even more, audacious. But yeah, you're rewarded for those steps of those little courageous moments of, just starting it and giving it a try.
What I tell my mentees is, what do you have to lose? If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. Is that your advice as well? And how do people get over the fear of doing all this? As you know, I have a summer intern class. Shout out to Nick Skok for making the introduction to us today. Thank you, Nick. They're often wondering, and they often say, gosh, I'm afraid to do that, or it's too bold, as you said. What's your advice to them? If you don't shoot, you're not going to score.
Yeah, I've always thought of that. Even when I started a business, you're never going to hit a home run if you don't step up to the plate. To hit a home run, you've got to be willing to go into the batter's box and give it a try. It's kind of the old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. If you wait and kind of make sure everything's okay. You may have missed the moment. So just give it a try. As you say, what have you got to lose? When you think about it, more, in a cold, clear way, there is really not a lot of downside. And so I think you've got to be willing to be, to stand out. And it's not always going to work, but you'll learn something by the experience. And, it's not going to be fatal. It's not going to be terrible, and I think people often let their imagination get away with them a bit. And they think, of the downside too much. And I think you have to be a little more convinced of the opportunity, what you're trying to build, and have a passion about something, and think of what you're wanting to accomplish, and let that be the focus and not the negativity of what could go wrong.
This episode of In Search of Excellence is brought to you by Sandee.com, SANDEE.com. We're a Yelp for beaches and have created the world's most comprehensive beach resource by cataloging more than 100 categories of information for every beach in the world, more than 100,000 beaches in 212 countries. Sandee.com provides beachgoers around the world with detailed, comprehensive, and easy-to-use information to help them plan their perfect beach getaway at home and abroad, and to make sure you're never disappointed by a beach visit again. Plan the perfect beach trip today by visiting Sandee.com. That's www.sandee.com. The link is in our show notes. Stay sandy, my friends. So you're at Chicago, junior year. They have a program called the Professional Option Program. You went on to get your MBA there. And you mentioned the Christmas tree business that you had. Tell us about your slogan, Fine Pines and Awesome Blossoms, and what lessons you learned there, particularly with respect to managing inventory.
You have to remind me of this, Randy. My slogan as a young marketeer. Yeah, and so one December, I just decided to, make a little money. And so back in my hometown of Munster, Indiana, actually it was the neighboring town of Hammond, Indiana, there was an empty lot that I knew about. And so I just, I rented a flatbed truck. I went down to the Water Street Market, bought a truckload of Christmas trees, brought them down to Hammond, Indiana, and set up shop. I cajoled a cousin of mine to help me out because it was kind of long hours. It was cold. I needed a little help. And I just painted a sign, Fine Pines and Awesome Blossoms. And people would stop by. And it was a great experience. It lasts a month. But I quickly learned, I kind of broke even on this, that managing your inventory is the key to success, that I earned enough money to pay for the electric lights, the fencing, the inventory. But my profit was really the inventory that was left over, maybe about, 30, 40 trees. I miscalculated a bit. You can't sell your very last tree. You've got to have, some inventory. And so inventory management, not having too many trees, not having too few trees. I imagine it's the same in car dealerships, a lot of businesses, but managing that inventory is going to be a key to turning a profit. And so I broke even. I learned a lot. But to me, it was more of a learning experience too. I'd hoped to make some money. My profit was really the leftover Christmas lights that lit up the lot, the fencing, all of this equipment that I had purchased. I guess that was my profit too. But we had so much fun. It's hard to, to underestimate the joy, when you sell a family with young kids, a Christmas tree. The kids are just so excited, delighted. And so really seeing the light in the customer's eyes as they take away one of the trees that you have set up in your lot. It was just a lot of fun, and the snow is lightly falling, and it never seemed cold to me, even though I'm sure it was very cold. It was just a very warm, fun experience that I did for a month. But, another data point in kind of this entrepreneurial journey that I found myself not consciously, just kind of out of curiosity, kind of going down.
So Christmas time, it's a fun time, as you mentioned, family, happy times. You said that one of the reasons why you did the Christmas trees and sold them was to make the world a better place. You've also mentioned that it was fun. Should starting a company be fun? And if it's not, and you see a huge business opportunity in front of you, should you do it anyway?
I don't think you should. I think it should be fun. It should be something you're extremely passionate about. You're going to spend most of your waking hours at this endeavor, so you better like it. If it's a big opportunity, but you don't like it, I don't see the point in pursuing it. You better find something you really enjoy. I've been fortunate. I don't think I've worked a day in my life, at Morningstar. I've enjoyed every minute of it. There's ups and downs, but, it's a journey of building something. And so I think like most entrepreneurs, I would counsel, would-be entrepreneurs to find something they're passionate about, something they enjoy doing. Otherwise, I think you're nuts. I don't know why you'd want to pursue something that you don't enjoy doing. And so find something where you can kind of turn your passion, into a business opportunity, or find an opportunity around something you're passionate about. Then you'll throw yourself into it, hook, line, and sinker. And your odds of success, I think, will dramatically escalate.
When you graduated, you and your roommate Kirk started a firm called Strategic Media Research, which conducted market research for radio stations. You didn't like that. You were not passionate about that, so you left. And as you mentioned, passion has been one of the keys and the important ingredients of things that you want to do in your success. How important is perseverance as part of the passion? And are they closely related, first cousins, or are they brothers and sisters?
No, that's right. So right out of business school, my college and business school roommate and I started a business doing research for radio stations. And that was his passion. He had worked for radio stations in downtown Chicago through college and business school. And we had an idea around that we both worked on for a couple of years. But, after a couple of years, that was his passion, not mine. And so we're still great friends today. He's still one of my best friends. He's still doing that business. But I left and wanted to pursue an entrepreneurial business around my passion, which is investing. But it was still an important experience for me. I saw in more depth how to put a business together through that experience. So that was a very important formational experience for me, was starting that business. But then, I guess the second part of your question, perseverance, is huge for entrepreneurs. That you're going to have ups and downs. And it's interesting. I do a fair amount of venture investing today. And I often debate with the person who helps me with this venture portfolio, is it the business idea or the entrepreneur that makes the difference? And we kind of look at, our history of investing, and invariably it's the entrepreneur. 100%. That there's somebody at the helm who just does not want to give up, will not give up, and will iterate, and revise and find ways to make it work. And the original business plan is typically not what works, but they've iterated on it, and it's something else that works. And the entrepreneurs who fail are the ones where the initial plan doesn't work, and then they say, well, that's just business. Not all of these work, and they kind of close up shop and move on. But the successful ones iterate and find a way to make it work. I remember I worked with, after the radio business, a venture capital firm, a guy named Carl Thoma, who has a very successful venture firm today, Thoma Bravo. And, Carl would often say, there must be some way to make this work. There's got to be some way to make this work. And that always stuck with me, that there's got to be some way that if you think about a problem long enough, hard enough, it's kind of like a physics problem or something. The problem, the answer isn't apparent in the first couple of minutes you look at it. But if you noodle on it and you keep at it, you keep chipping away, you keep peeling away, eventually you come up with a solution. And so it's that perseverance, that things that seem very daunting, impossible at first blush, if you keep at it and keep chipping away, you keep chipping away, and you refuse to give up, take, no for an answer that it can't be done, I think ultimately you'll find some level of success.
We look at it the exact same way. As an entrepreneur, when we started our first tech company, and even before then, I had the mentality that if someone dropped me off in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with a raft, I was going to find land no matter what. And that's the mentality I always had, never going to give up. And that's exactly what we look for in founders for companies that we look at and put money into. Like you, I've gone back, I've looked at the deals that have worked, looked at the deals that have not worked. And to use your exact words, it's invariably the founder or founding team that makes the difference here when funding companies. 100% of the time. And like you said, it almost never ends up how you started. So every business plan we look at, we say, okay, well, what could go wrong here? And the answer is tons of things and things you can't even think of as you think of all the things that go wrong. And it's been fun to coach and mentor and watch people iterate on their business and just go through all of the bumps and the bruises that every single one of us goes through when we build companies.
Yeah, and I think it's much easier to do that if you're really passionate about the area that you've started a business in. You know, if you started it just because it's a big opportunity, you're more likely to, give up on the downturn. But if it's something you're passionate about, I think the odds of you sticking with it and pushing. But I think you're absolutely right, Randy, that mindset should be there, that I'm going to find a way to make this work. There's got to be some way to make it work. And like you in the life raft, you'll find land eventually.
So many entrepreneurs, for lots of reasons, they start companies and they don't work. They go bankrupt. They do try different things to work. Sometimes they just don't work. Do you fund entrepreneurs who have failed before? And if so, what do you look for when they come back a second time?
Yeah, I would fund an entrepreneur who's failed before. I mean, I think that's a great education for somebody. I've done that. And, I asked them what they learned with their failure. One common thing that people have learned who do it a second time is that, they spent money too freely. Maybe they raised money and then they ended up, of course, they went out of business, so they ran out of money. And the second time around, they're much, much more frugal.
Right.
And, I do think it is often the second business that really succeeds. Even for me, we mentioned the radio business, and I did that for a year or two. And that was never really a home run. It survived, but it never flourished. I love my co-founder there, but I think we had different attitudes about spending money, and we would often argue about, ways to spend money. And so it was really liberating for me. Once I started my own business, I could spend money or not spend money, in ways that made sense to me. And so I learned something through that experience. And so I think somebody who's gone through that, the odds of success actually go up. Somebody who's failed before. To me, it's not a black mark on somebody, and it's almost the reverse. I think it's a positive.
I've been saying for years, again, as part of my mentorship program to my mentees, if you're going to buy a McDonald's, go get behind the counter for 2 months and go work in the kitchen and do your own due diligence that way. And I think due diligence is so important in deciding not only what we want to do in life, but just to learn. It's true in the venture deals we do. Some of our biggest mistakes have been relying on big venture firms who are investors in the deal that they've done all of the due diligence, so we don't have to do our own. And that's been a disaster at times. You had a stint at Arby's, which for those of you who don't know out there, it's a fast food sandwich chain with 3,300 stores around the country. Tell us about Arby's and your experience as a night manager and what you learned in that job.
Yeah. So one of the ideas I had, crazy ideas, after I wound down left the radio business, was a concept for healthy fast food. And so I like to take care of my health. I like to eat right. I like to exercise. And I looked around at the food options via fast food and was dismayed. This is pre-Whole Foods. And I thought, there could be an opportunity with healthier fast food. I'd worked at a few restaurants, in high school, dishwasher, kitchen prep, but I'd never really managed one. So I thought, before I embark on this, it's a big endeavor to start a business. I better go see what managing a restaurant's all about. So I went and I worked as a night manager at an Arby's in Chicago. And I found I absolutely hated it. It's, God bless those who work in restaurants. I found restaurants kind of the hardest work for the least amount of money. But you've really got to manage the personnel tightly. It's tough to turn a profit. It's hard, exhausting work. You do a swing shift, you're up late, you've got to be up early the next morning. And then I just found I wasn't that passionate about it. And so after a couple months, I said, hey, this isn't for me. And that's when I pivoted. But it was a great learning experience. And, thank goodness I didn't put any capital into actually starting something. But I think, like your advice to would-be entrepreneurs, it's spot on. I give the same advice, to somebody very young. If you've never worked in the area that you're thinking of starting a business, by all means, go work in that area for a year or two. Maybe not too long, but a year or two, and learn on someone else's dime. You'll get invaluable experience that, trust me, will be extremely valuable to you when you go to start your business in that field. Even if it's you find out, hey, I don't want to do this. I know many would-be lawyers, before they go to law school, they work as a paralegal and they think, hey, this is not what I thought law was. It's not like I saw on television. And then they scrap the whole law school plan. And so to, have that experience of, try it a little bit, get some experience, because it might not sound like it reads in the brochure. And so you really need to go try it. And I think your advice is really, really valuable.
Are you looking for your next great gift to surprise a friend, colleague, or loved one? Bliss Beaches makes the perfect gift. This best-selling bright and beautiful coffee table book by Randall Kaplan features stunning drone photography from exotic beach locations around the world. It's the perfect housewarming gift, a great addition to any home or office, and a fun and creative alternative to bringing a bottle of wine to somebody's house for dinner. Bliss Beaches is available for purchase on Amazon, where it has glowing reviews and a 5-star rating. Get your next amazing gift and order a copy of Bliss Beaches by clicking the link in our show notes. I worked at a restaurant, also in high school and college. I was a waiter at Chi-Chi's, and I learned so much about customer service, serving people who some are nice, some are mean, some are generous, some are cheap, and just the constant need to please people and be on your game all the time. How important is customer satisfaction and customer service to our success in building companies or in just being a professional in a regular company?
Well, it's huge. It's what it's all about, satisfying a customer. You see it when you sell a Christmas tree to someone, you sell them soda from your dorm room. You can look in the customer's eyes. Are they happy or not? And it's at a very granular level. You experience it just as you did when you were a waiter at Chi-Chi's. And so everyone should have that experience. If you're too far removed from that customer experience, you're back coding in the back room, you don't see how customers interact with your software, I think it's going to be really hard to understand, if the product or service you're delivering really resonates with your audience. And so I think you've got to get up close and have that experience on a very personal level. And I always counsel, people at Morningstar, get out, meet with advisors, go to their space, see how they use our products. I think you have to experience it and not just, look at feedback forms and surveys. And to me, business is very personal, one at a time. People vote with their dollars. You have to get their dollar to win. And so you've got to get out there and see it firsthand. And so having some experience like that, learning to deal with people, hugely valuable. So I wouldn't, I've learned something from every job I've had, good or bad, of what to do and what not to do. And just like you in your restaurant experience, super valuable to get any work experience. I tell that to my kids. You'll learn something from every job.
So many of us who have had some success in our life have experienced a moment where something ignites us. We said, gosh, that's incredible. I want to do that. I know what I want to do. I know that I want to be in this business. As we move through your career, can you tell us about the Acorn Fund and Ralph Langer and the book, The Money Masters by John Train, and this really obscure money manager whose stock was trading at $300 a share at the time?
Yeah, that was my epiphany. And so as you mentioned earlier, I went to business school after college at the University of Chicago, and I learned all about efficient markets. And I understood it, I got it. But the message I learned was you can't beat the market. So fire your stock analysts, invest in passive index funds, which was a bit revolutionary at the time. Today, it's kind of common accepted practice. But fortunately, I read a book called The Money Masters, as you noted, by John Train, which is a fantastic book. If you're interested in investing, I would recommend it. And the first chapter is on Warren Buffett, the obscure money manager who you referenced. And when I read that, the light bulb went off in my head that here was an approach to investing that made a lot of sense to me. And moreover, here was somebody who did it with integrity, loved doing it, did it with humor and zest, enthusiasm. And that's when I really, really got interested in investing. And you're right, Buffett at the time, he's a household name today, but at the time was very obscure. Berkshire Hathaway, today it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is it 500,000 a share?
Yeah, $531,000 as of yesterday.
531,000.
That's 1,770 times where it was trading back in the day when you were a Warren Buffett devotee for the first time.
Yeah, it was $300 a share. Buffett owned half of it. His net worth was $150 million. And it was obscure. But again, it was more the reasoning, the approach that really resonated with me. And that's what got me super excited about investing. Again, I learned about it at the University of Chicago. It didn't excite me. But reading about Buffett, his approach, so then I was like a sponge. I read all the Berkshire Hathaway annual reports. He describes his philosophy in more depth. I ended up, working at an investment firm in Chicago, Harris Associates, which practiced a Warren Buffett style of investing. And I got to know that firm because I would do my research on companies that, were kind of in the Warren Buffett mold, or, the types of companies he liked to invest in. And I often looked down and I saw that the largest shareholder was Harris Associates. And I kept, who is this firm? So I went and I did my research on this firm. And I saw that, they were the largest institutional shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway. And so I went and I worked there. And they had a fund at the time, the Acorn Fund, run by Ralph Wenger. So I got on the inside of an institutional money manager, but also got an inside peek into a mutual fund and how that worked.
For those of our listeners and viewers who don't know what a mutual fund is, can you explain what it is and how many there were back in the day?
Yeah, so a mutual fund is a pooled investment